Hello, what's going on, guys? This is John Hasselbauer, golf writer for thelines.com, and in this video from the tips, we'll be going over the Memorial Tournament, as well as looking back a bit at everything that went down at Colonial Country Club at last week's Charles Schwab Challenge. Before we get any further, make sure you are subscribed to the Lines YouTube channel. Hit the bell below this video to get up to date on all of the new videos that come out, not just from the tips, but all the other sports as we get into NBA Finals now between the Nuggets and the Heat. You can also find links to the Discord, which is free as always, and all of my tournament preview articles and other player write-ups on thelines.com that come out on a weekly basis. So getting right into it, last week was Memorial Day weekend. I hope everybody had a nice, long, restful weekend and got a chance to enjoy some of the golf, play some golf. I got out twice this weekend, which is probably as many times as I've played up until this May this year. It has not been a ton of golf for me in my personal life, so I was happy to take advantage of the good weather. And looking forward to more rounds played this summer, hopefully. Still kicking some rust off of my game, but it's always nice to be able to get out there. As a result, I probably watched a little bit less of the golf than I normally would, but I did catch the end with Griot kind of being the last one to not give that tournament away. It's just such a quintessential win for Emiliano Griot. Just doing everything he could to give it away. And when you look at a statistical profile of a player like Emiliano Griot, he's one of these guys where I'm like, I'll play him in DFS. I'm not going to bet him outright because when it gets down to it, he's going to do something stupid and eject himself from the tournament. Lo and behold, he did just that with double bogey on 18 when he had a 2-stroke lead, had one hand on the trophy and just completely gagged it. Fortunate for him, it was Adam Schenk and Harry Hall who were chasing him, and neither of those guys are really going to assert their will on a tournament either. They're both chasing their first career PGA Tour wins. So in the end, Griot was able to pull through. Griot was a guy I played a lot in DFS. I actually had a pretty decent DFS week. But again, just for that win equity, not somebody that I really tend to think about from an outright perspective. I think, I was on Tony Finau and Sung J M, who both missed the cut disappointingly. A lot of disappointing miscuts, interestingly enough, maybe a result of the loaded schedule and a lot of guys coming here out of commitments that may have otherwise wanted to take a breather with such a loaded summer schedule. But, Spieth missed the cut. Chris Kirk missed the cut. Yeah, he was somebody that was very high on. That's always played well here. Finau always plays well here. Sung Jae always plays well here. So a lot of the big name favorites were pretty disappointing. It was pretty much just Scheffler from the list of top elites who showed up last week, and he continues to impress without his best stuff, especially putting, just not being able to hit any putts. I don't know what he has to do to fall outside of the top 10 in a tournament. Yet again, he finds himself in the mix without his best stuff. He finished 1 stroke off the playoff somehow. I wrote him up in this week's memorial article, basically like right when he teed off in round 4. I think he was like T8. And it, I think if he finished outside the top 10, he would have a dramatically different numbers. But then he gets that hole in one. He gets one more birdie on the back, puts himself in position to win again. Very similar to what we saw from him at at TPC Craig Ranch for the Byron Nelson, where he didn't have his best stuff, but he kind of made a charge late on Sunday anyway. As a result, he's going to be the odds-on favorite this week. Not something I anticipated when I wrote up my player, my tournament preview. I thought that Rahm would be the favorite over Scheffler, and that we might potentially get longer than 8-1 odds on Scotty. But lo and behold, Scotty is this immovable force. Can't really find him at anything longer than 6 to 7 to 1. So as a result, I will not be betting Scotty Scheffler. That's my rule. I'm just not going to bet anybody shorter than 8 to 1 odds. So I went a different route with my betting card, which we will get to in the second half of this video. With that said, I think we can jump straight into the tournament preview article. Again, that is linked in the description to this YouTube video, so you can go and comb through every detail you need to know about Muirfield Village. Cliff notes for Muirfield Village: it went through a dramatic renovation project in 2020. They hosted back-to-back events here in the COVID year. They had the Memorial Tournament, and then they also had the just the work day. I think they just called it the work day. 2 weeks in a row played on this property. The second time, when it was not the Memorial, they made the course a little bit easier. They made the pins more accessible. The rough kind of died out a little bit, so it wasn't as penal, and it was much more scoreable. Colin Morikawa beat Justin Thomas in a playoff at the workday that year, and I think you can go back and forth whether you want to include that in your research, but it was a dramatically different golf course conditions wise than what we typically would see at the Memorial, where they design it to be a little bit more penal. And reward, all around tee to green and putting. Also for, other updates to the course, they added about 100 extra yards since that renovation. So basically, as soon as that workday event was over, they completely overhauled the course. They did essentially what they're doing right now with Colonial, where they had a full year to turn it around and not miss the next year's tournament. They were able to do that successfully. Just rearranged some bunkers, totally overhauled the greens, added like sub air. So this is in Dublin, Ohio, so conditions are more brutal here than what we see in most PGA Tour events. Kind of the reason why we don't have many great events on the PGA Tour in the northern part of the United States. And another reason why we were just at Oak Hill, and they needed to have that sub air there as well to sustain playing conditions and be able to host events in May. So that's what we're dealing with Muirfield Village. It is one of the most pristine venues on the PGA Tour circuit. It is, of course, Jack Nicklaus's crown jewel, known as Jack's Place. Everybody, gets their own milkshake when they're here. They get the sweater when you win. The whole 9 yards. It's a tournament that is well coveted by all of the players on the PGA Tour. Obviously, you have the majors and you have the players. I think many people would say after those 5 events that they probably would want to win the Memorial more than any other. I mean, maybe you have like an exception, like a Max Homa who grew up in LA and he really wanted Riviera. That's Tiger's event. It's sort of on a very similar echelon, these two events. So it's an important one. It's the type of event where players will work their schedule around being available to play here. I'm interested to see how many people skip the Canadian Open next week, because that's also a huge event, and a very, historically important event. Really great fireworks last year with Rory beating Justin Thomas and Tony Finau, kind of scorching what should have been a really tough course. And you saw kind of like a tournament within a tournament of those 3 guys destroying it and playing their A game, while most of the field kind of struggled to shoot, single digits under par. But anyway, everybody's here with the exception of Max Homa and Tony Finau. I was, and I'll just scroll through to the field at a glance here. I was curious why Max Homa wasn't here, because he's finished top 6 each of the last 2 years. It's a course that really suits him. I had an outright on him last year, and he shot like 29 on the front 9 and looked like he was going to really make a run at Billy Horschel. Then as this course does, it kind of sneaks up on you, and he had a rough go on the back 9. But Homa, according to Twitter, is not here because his sister is getting married. I think that some relative close to him has a wedding this weekend. So that is the only reason why he's not here. It makes sense. He has a loaded schedule. I assume that means he'll be back for the Canadian Open, but if not, he's already on my betting card at the US Open. To be honest, I put that future in, assuming that he would play well at the Memorial and that this would be his last start before the US Open. He would look good and his odds would come down. So that is not great, at least from like a closing line value standpoint, because he's kind of just coming off of like an okay showing at Colonial and an okay showing at the PGA Championship. So, it's not exactly like you would be buying low on Homa. I got a 35-1 on him, and I have a feeling that's probably what his odds will be when we get to US Open week in a couple weeks. So that's the field. Otherwise, it is a lot of heavy hitters. It's everybody else in the top 40, with the exception of Finau and Homa, who are qualified and on the PGA Tour, not injured. Scheffler is your odds-on favorite. I was a little surprised by that. I think general consensus, if you asked around, it's still Scheffler and Rahm are 1A, 1B on the PGA Tour, and Rahm has essentially 1.5 wins here, having one official win and one dominant 3-round showing where he was forced to withdraw due to COVID. So if I were the odds maker, I would make Rahm more of a favorite than Scheffler. That's why I thought Scheffler could potentially open at 8-1, 9-1, and have a shot there to bet him outright. But I like them both. I think just because I featured Scheffler as my spotlight player of the week this week. It's not a shot against Rahm. It's not a shot against Rory or Cantlay. I expect them all to play well. I just thought, as a function of how dominant Rahm and Cantlay have been at this course, that we might have gotten some drift. But in the end, the sports books are a little more sharp than I may have given them credit for. So yes, the field is loaded, and they're going to be tough to beat because the best players in the world play really well at Muirfield Village. Other important things to know about the course itself. It is, after the renovation, it's playing over 7,500 yards. So it is a long course, but it is a par 72. A lot of that length is coming from the par 5s. I'll actually switch over to the odds page, and you can navigate to that by clicking right here. This is always how we split up the tournament preview format now, so you can get the top line info you need to know about the course in my tournament preview, and then if you click on the odds page, that's going to give you more detail on the course specs itself, a description of the course, and betting trends. So this page is updated just as regularly as the tournament preview page is, and this week there's a lot more info. Went a little bit overboard on all the need to know stats here, so easy to go overlook, but there's a lot of info in both of these two pages to make sure you are checking both out in your Memorial Tournament research. Going to the scorecard here and all. So it is 7,571 yards after the renovation. That is about 100 yards longer than it used to be. The fairways are pretty generous here. I think Jack Nicklaus, when he was designing this course, wanted it to be a course where you hit a bunch of drivers. And so rather than tightening the fairways and making it a decision of whether or not you want to hit driver, he basically said, I want you to hit driver on every hole. I don't want tight fairways to discourage you from doing that. The second shot is what's going to be more important. Now, if you're hitting a lot of drivers, that means that you can't be completely spraying it, because the rough here is as penal as any rough that we see anywhere else on the PGA Tour. 4 inches is very long as far as PGA Tour rough goes, and it's this mix of bluegrass, rye, and fescue. So it's really pretty nasty stuff. I think Bay Hill is close in comparison to how penal and long the rough can be from other comp PGA Tour courses. Torrey Pine's another one to reference, just long courses where you need to keep it in the fairway. But in general, even though there's presence of thick rough on this property, it's not a course where guys are playing the entire round from the rough, like an Oak Hill, where the fairways were so pinched that the fairway finders actually had an advantage because it was a skill to hit the fairways, and they were running so fast and firm that you could still get a lot of distance. Joel Damon commented on that a bunch at Oak Hill, that he could get run out on those fairways and hang with these guys. Here, not exactly the case. I mean, it is going to be fairly firm fairways, and the conditions are really looking very good this week, which is usually not the case in this event. We've had a lot of rainstorms and wind and cold, even on the first week of June. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I think we're going to get pretty ideal conditions, which means scoring should be a little bit lower than what we've seen in the past. And then just looking from a comp course standpoint, I would say if I had to pick like my favorite comp to Muirfield Village, it is kind of a combination of Torrey Pines and Bay Hill, in my opinion. There's a lot of drivers, long, really thick rough that comes into play, both primarily around the green. I think there's going to be a lot of missed greens and regulations, even though it sort of acts as this glorified second shot course. A lot of guys are going to be hitting approaches from the fairway, but the angles into these really tucked pins, it's so important to hit the green in the right area and have it trickle to the pin, and kind of understand how the undulations of the green interact with the pin locations. That's something that Patrick Cantlay has commented every time he plays this course, that he just feels like he knows where to hit it, and that experience gives him a leg up on people playing it for the first time. So I do think experience is important, even though they did have the extensive renovation. Just by looking at the leaderboard in 2021 and 2022 for the first 2 years since the renovation, it does seem like the same players who had been playing well continue to do so. And in some respects, it acted as more of like a restoration to modernize the layout and get bunkers to be in the right places to serve as a penalty to adapt to the modern game. And there was some reworking to the greens, but it seems like if you were able to figure out the firm and fast bent grass greens before, everybody just continued to do so in the next 2 years. And then, I'm looking at just difficult firm and fast bent grass courses that are long in general. So I think Bethpage and Oak Hill continue to be good comps. These are all scream like Patrick Cantlay, John Rahm to me as well. Olympia Field's another one. TPC Harding Park's another one. Just like, this event has been played in cold weather and nasty conditions too. So maybe it's worth looking back in the years where conditions were really nasty. If that's the only year that somebody played well, then there might be something more to that, where this is not going to be as much of a grind this year as it has been in years past. And then lastly, I just want to get to the odds grid, the odds trends of winners, because it's really interesting looking at this event, because Muirfield Village is a difficult test. It's a long course. It has penal rough. It rewards great tee to green play. If you look down the strokes gain metrics of every year at the top of the leaderboard, the people finishing top 10 are gaining off the tee approach around the green and putting. So it's not the type of course where you can gain 10 strokes on approach and make up for losing 2 strokes putting. It just doesn't happen here. You need to have it all. So that typically means the favorites win when those are the conditions. That's what we see in majors. For some reason, there's been a ton of bombs that just come from nowhere and have played really well here. Lingmerth and McGirt, 201, 501 in back-to-back years, 2016, 2015. And even some big names, kind of like, announcing themselves on a big stage before they were actually like huge names. So like Matsuyama at 66-1, Duffner at 66-1, Bryson, one of his first wins, I forget if this was his first career, 50-1, and then Horschel at 60-1, who had a pair of top 15s before that. So like good players who sort of aren't in maybe the best form have proven to get it done here. And you're looking at the winning score. that's the other just comment of, what's happened to this course since the renovation. -13 in the first 2 years. That's pretty much right where it's always been. There was 1 year in super soft conditions where Cantlay won at -19. But in general, this is a course that's had a median scoring average of about +1 over par, maybe even. But not a course that guys are tearing apart. You have to be strategic and patient around a course like this. Okay, so now we'll move on to the model and just look through the key stats, everything that I plugged in, what it spit out. And of course, this is all sourced from Fantasy National. So my mixed condition model, I started with comp course history, again, just feeding in all those courses that we talked about, the more northern, long, difficult bent grass courses. There's a lot to choose from in that regard. And I think that is very translatable to success when you look down the list and the correlation of it all. Next, approach. It is kind of a second shot course, so approach is huge here, particularly from 175 plus. I've got tee to green over the last 12 rounds for recent form. Par 5 scoring, I think, is huge this week. There's 4 par 5s. They all average under par, and none of the other 14 holes average under par. So this is where you got to make your birdies and then hang on for dear life on the other 14. I've got strokes gained short game in comparable conditions. So that would be firm and fast bent grass greens with long surrounding rough. Very specific, but that is a crucial part of what it takes to succeed at Muirfield Village. The par 4s are concentrated to 450 to 500. Similar to short game, I've also put good drives gained in long courses with very penal rough. So that just tells me, are you hitting the fairway and avoiding those hazards when there's thick rough around? Or if it's inevitable to play out of that thick rough, are you still able to hit greens in regulation from it? So I think that's an important mixed condition stat to have this week. And then I just have some blanket off the tee, around the green, scrambling, weighted putting, and driving distance. So this is already filtered in order of the top 10, but the top 10 for me this week is Scotty Scheffler at number 1. That makes sense. Just ridiculous. His ranks right now. He's number 1 in comp course history, approach, tee to green, long par 4 scoring, and even these stats, which I didn't put into the model, but total strokes gained over the last 36, total strokes gained tee to green, and strokes gained ball striking. He's number 1 in all of them. So hasn't won here yet, but played well in each of his last 2 appearances. Definitely a threat. Definitely somebody that I will want exposure to in DFS. The rest of the top 10 is Rahm, Schauffele, Cantlay, McIlroy. That is huge chalk. Those are the top 5 favorites, and they're all 12-1 or less. So I think that is, again, just a testament to what's going into the model. So whenever that's the case, I'm more likely to trust it and look for value in the rest of the top 10. And then the second half of the top 10 is Hatton, Sung Jae, Jason Day, Justin Thomas, and Victor Hovland. Okay, so that is the model, and now I will just filter this by the players that I have bet. Again, plan A this week would have been Scheffler on a short card, but he's about 6 or 7-1 to win. So that was out the door. I was only going to bet him if it got to 9, which is about what his odds are looking like in the majors. So I thought we might get some of that here, but lo and behold, we did not. So the pivot plan was to kind of pepper the mid-range of the board and get these sort of talented players who may not be in the best immediate form, but suit these comparable conditions. That's something that we've seen with Hideki when he won here and Billy Horschel when he won here. So I think there's plenty of merit to that. It's a very demanding course. It can expose even the best of players. So I chose to go this route. I kicked it off with actually Colin Morikawa at 28-1. He was the shortest player on my card. Colin is somebody that I really like at the U.S. Open, mainly because it's on POA greens. back at his home in LA. So part of me is kind of hoping that he doesn't look his best this week so we can get an even longer number, but maybe this is a little bit of a hedge. He has very good results here. He obviously won at this course for the WGC, or not WGC, it was just the Workday event. I'll pull up his player page here. And you can see at the Memorial, he has had, in addition to that win in 2020, that was the Workday event, he also lost in a playoff to Patrick Cantlay in 2021. That was, of course, the year that Jon Rahm should have ran away with it, but it doesn't change the fact that he gained 17 strokes on the field and putted really well that year. So he is capable of figuring out these greens. Obviously, when you look at his player profile, tee to green, he's been phenomenal. And the putting, he has not been able to figure it out yet. But the approach game has not left. This is everything that we would expect from Colin. He's going to play from the fairways. He's going to be able to get a ton of good looks at these greens from the middle of the fairway. So ultimately, it's just going to come down to putting. And with Colin, it doesn't really matter so much what the putting form looks like because he's shown us he can just randomly pop. He did it at the Century, say Jude 2.5. So you have to, it's not going to be every week, even the Genesis. Now we're going back to 2022. But, this is what he does. He loses 5 weeks in a row. And then randomly 1 week it all clicks. So maybe it's this week. Maybe it's the U.S. Open. I'll probably be on him for both. But the ball striking is too good for 28 to 1 on somebody who has proven to have the course history at a course that really rewards having good course history. So I started with Colin. I went Hatton with my second bet. Hatton's having a phenomenal statistical season. I'll pull up his player page as well. And you can see it's so important to gain in all four categories at Muirfield Village. If you look over the last 5, 10, 20, 100 events that he's played, he's gaining across the board. And that's not even just an average. It's literally just every time he tees it up, he is gaining in all four categories. So that's something that you really need at Muirfield Village. He has pretty solid I guess he's only played here once, but he looked solid in his one pass appearance, just didn't have it with the putter, but he is the type of player that can, be relied on to make some putts and just able to kind of do it in all facets. The season he's having has been a remarkable resurgence. His last win on the PGA Tour was at Bay Hill, and everything you need to do at Bay Hill, you need to do it at Muirfield Village. So this seems to be the type of course that he can really step up at. Definitely trending towards a win. I don't know when it's going to happen, but Hatton's not really the type of guy I'm concerned about closing out a tournament. His issue has been he's kind of been backdooring this, looking great on Sunday, but not putting himself in position to have a go at it on the final day. So a couple of top fives in his last 3 starts. Form is good. 30 to 1 is a great number. This is the type of course that I could see Hatton winning on. Next, I went with Matt Fitzpatrick. Just a guy I'll buy low on in difficult conditions. It rewards driving distance here. You look at short game and comp conditions, he's number 6. Comp course history, he's number 7. We're expecting a little bit easier conditions than some recent years, but I still think it's going to be 15 to 1 is the winning score. Maybe 13 to 1 is the winning score. He's somebody who can capitalize on par 5s. He's 17th in par 5 score. He has the distance to get to all of these in 2. Really good putter, especially on bent grass. And those approach numbers are a little concerning, but they've gotten better more recently. This is over the last 36 rounds, and that's including some reps where he was playing injured. So he played well at the Masters. I believe he led the field on approach at the Masters. And if you can do that at Augusta, you can definitely bring that same sort of approach to Muirfield Village. I then have Shane Lowry at 60 to 1. This is a little bit of a narrative bet since we're playing in Dublin, Ohio. But I do like Shane Lowry this week, and I just think he's going to be similar to Morikawa. He'll be playing from the fairway. Approach has been great. He has pretty decent results at Muirfield Village, and has proven to be able to putt here, even if he's not putting so well right now. Look good at the PGA Championship, and somebody who just as we get more north, he seems to play better. Similar story with Adam Scott. The game looks to be trending in the right direction. I think I got an 80-1 on him. Plays long course as well. The ball striking has been great. He's gaining in both off the tee and on approach. And really hot with the putter right now, especially on bent greens. So it seems like a good course fit for him. He has a runner-up in the past couple top fives as well. And another guy who it's just been too long since he last won. So would not surprise me if this was the week for him. And lastly, Kevin Streelman, I have at 300-1. A pair of top 20 finishes each of the last 2 weeks, and really good course history. He is fifth, I believe, in course history. All of these guys are top 40 in course history, which I think is important to repeat success at Muirfield Village. So he's been able to get it done without great form. Streelman has, and now looking in better form. 300-1. He's probably not going to win, but it's 300-1. So I'll take my chances. Okay, those are my bets. It's a pretty average card, 6 names, really 5.5, with Streelman being a long shot. But we are hoping that Rahm, Scheffler, or Cantlay do not run away with this and give some hope to the rest of the field. This is the type of event where we've seen long shots have some hope. So I think this is a week where it makes sense to have a sort of exposure to the middle of the odds board. So we'll see how that theory goes. Hopefully you found this video helpful. And I wish you the best of luck with your Memorial Tournament bets this week.